Hey guys, this is Jacolia of Jacolia Gems. Thank you for coming back once again to view my channel. If you are new here, welcome. If you are returning, hey y'all. If you have not already done so, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And for those of you whom have already subscribed, thank you so much. For those of you that continuously come back to watch the videos and have not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Also, guys, please do me a favor. Go through this video, all of my videos that you have watched, and hit the like button to help me out in the algorithm. Now, on today, I am making another video about me. I believe I left off around the age of 12, so I'll do like a brief wrap up for those of you who are new here. I'll also link down below in the description the first About Me video. And this About Me is going to not only go into me, but also into people who are like me in several different ways. So, for those of you who don't know, I hail from the west side of Chicago. I am first generation Chicago on my dad's side. My mom was born in a house in Mississippi. So everyone around me, older than me, significantly older than me, were born in Mississippi outside of my father. Um, I'm a love baby. I was born in 1986. My mother and father were married for 36 years in November. In July, before my mother passed away in November. They met in church. My father was a young minister ever since the age of 16, coming up in a Pentecostal background. My mother was coming from a Church of Christ background with her mother, and she was just seeking the Most High for more knowledge. She said that she knew that there was more understanding, and the Most High led her to the church that my father was the first youth minister of. He began to seek the Most High about a wife. He wanted a wife. He came from a two-parent household. His parents were married for 54 years before my grandfather passed away in 2016. My mom came from a two-parent household as well. Her mom and stepfather were married for over 20-something years before he passed away in 2004, and both of them grew up in different dynamics. And so when my father courted my mother, they started off, couldn't stand each other. My mother was actually pregnant with my oldest sister. My mom was off to college and ended up getting pregnant at the age of 19. Ended up coming home and just completely focused on the Most High, and had to stop her college career. She didn't like my father initially, him being gorgeous, very charming, very intellectual man. He had a lot of attention. And my mother basically ran away from him, didn't really like him, couldn't stand him. He had to seek after her, gain her hand. And so they were engaged for 9 months and courting for 9 months. They got married in July of 85 and June of 86. They had me. My mother was diagnosed with cervical cancer while she was pregnant with me. So I've basically been going through health challenges from the womb, so to speak. There's a lot of effects that the mother's body and the dynamic of the environment not only has on her, but on the infant as well. And so I was diagnosed with asthma around the age of 10, had a diagnosis of kidney disease that turned out not to be kidney disease. Kidney twisted itself. Went through just a lot of ups and downs physically. Molestation at the age of 4 by male cousins on both sides of my family, female cousins. Just end up seeing a lot from a very, very young age. Some things that I won't speak about publicly, something that I will, just at certain times and in certain ways. Some things I'll say for books, some things I'll just keep very close to me. Um, with that being said, in grammar school, this just the brief rundown because I know everybody's not going to go back and rewatch the other video. My mom sent us to school already knowing how to read our names, write our names, do simple math and ABCs and things of that nature. I was always very prolific with my words, with spelling, with reading, with comprehension, with history, with things of that nature. And I participated in 4-H club, was very earthy, was always into, oh, that's a maple tree, that's an oak tree. Oh, that's an edible plant. That's a poisonous plant. You can eat that off the branch. Was very much so in tune with the ocean and the sea. Everybody would always tell me that I swim like a mermaid when I was little, and I would practice swimming like a mermaid. I collected seashells as a little girl. I was very much so into a lot of things, spiritual things as a child, very prophetic at a very young age. I remember that I would have dreams that would wake me up and they would scare me. Some of them were nightmares. I was being tormented a lot when I was younger. Doors and, well, some of you don't know, but doors and gateways are opened when a child is molested. Um, and this is one reason why I have such a big heart for victims of rape and molestation, um, and not to dismiss those of us that were not penetrated when we were molested. But when there's something that happens when a child is forcefully entered into and sodomized, and there are even bigger doors and gateways that's opened up for that child spiritually, that they are not capable to begin to process mentally, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. So when we look at these aspects of our community and the hypersexualization of Black people in general, and some people are very dismissive when they dismiss rape and molestation and sodomy and abandonment and rejection as well as slavery from the fact that these things are causes and effects. And even though we have not gone through the 400 years and the things that our ancestors went through, we are still going through psychological, economical, sociological, um, emotional, spiritual. We are still being enslaved and in captive. And at least our ancestors knew they were slaves. And I don't even like using that phrase at least anymore because it's like a piss poor replacement or dismissing, but they knew that they were slaves. It's a poor mindset of people, of a Black people who are so readily to dismiss their pathology of trauma when it comes to how things point out. And this is never me making an excuse for anything that I've done or anything that anyone else has done. Anyone that knows me knows that I am not a shameless woman. I'm a woman that has regrets. And I know some people say that they don't have regrets, and that's something that I've tussled with before. And I know that there are 10 things specifically in my life that I have done that I regret to the point of no utterance. There are some things that never need to be repeated. Not some things that people do without any type of remorse. And people think that because you still live boldly as I do, and you still live openly and head held high, that you live without regret. I'm going to tell you something. And this is all tying in with me becoming a mother at a young age, me being a PK, me being raised in a two-parent household. When you are raised under the auspice of everything that I just named, you actually feel regret at a higher level than your counterparts, your peers, who are no longer deemed your equal, because there's a level of piety that people will place on you due to your bloodline. And this be biblical. This be biblical, even though we don't know if we're Levites. We don't know based off of where we are in diaspora, where we've been, scattered to throughout the earth. Even when we look at markers throughout the Hebraic tribes in West Africa and the tribes in the Caribbeans, we are not fully aware. But the fact that my parents are pastors, and the fact that I know that the law still stands, yet the repercussions of the law have been held off because of a grace period. And with that grace period, the Most High will add addendums just so that a remnant will be saved. And this is not a permission to sin as we begin to misappropriate scriptures by the Apostle Paul. This is me explaining that I know that I'm a wretch undone. And I know that if we were still over in the land, and that if Mashiach ben Yosef was here, that I would be unalived a long time ago. Because as a daughter of a man and of a woman, and even someone that was ordained and called and sent herself, stepping outside of that which you were called to was immediate death in our culture. I do not take for granted, nor do I take it light that the Most High has allowed me to wake up time and time again after 36 years of extreme lows. See, when you grow up in a two-parent household, people automatically assume that you should be without flaw, that you should be without hiccup, that you should be without spot, without wrinkle, without blemish, that you should be that sacrificial lamb. People will make PKs their sacrificial lambs and make us the scapegoat. I'm talking to y'all from a real place. I'm not the only PK that I know. My children are technically PKs, but they don't have to go through the things that I go through because I'm no one's pastor. And we're not a part of a congregation. Now, one thing that apostles Robert R. and Patricia A. Holliday did amazing that was still allowing us to be children. When I started preaching at the age of 12, my mother made sure that I still looked like a little girl. I would be so upset, y'all. I would be so angry with my mama, but I understood it and I understand it. I'm 10 years old and I'm a little nice. And that was something that was sexualized by my peers and by adults around me. I want to tell you guys something. The comments that adults make, I still get comments about my body. People talking about my weight and things. It's like my body has been under the eye of scrutiny since I was a little girl. My physicality has been a topic of discussion since I was a little girl. And this is the fact for a lot of Black women. Because truth be told, Black women are beautiful. We all come in different shades, sizes, whatever. But on average, the average Black woman that I see is at least a 6.5, 7. But I'm from Chicago, and we got some hitters here. We have some heavy hitters here. So Black women have been sexualized since they come here. How long is her hair? How light is her skin? How full are her lips? How chingy are her eyes? How light are they? How curvy is her little baby body? This happens. I'm speaking from a sit that I sit in, that I didn't ask to sit in. We talk about pretty privilege, but today we're going to talk about a lot of things because people deem physicality all the time as a privilege. People deem two-parent household all the time as a privilege. And it was. It's actually your right. We stepped outside. It's a commandment. And because we have stepped outside of who we are supposed to be, We have our children in brokenness. So let me say that. But when you're dealing with two parents, you're dealing with the both sides, the good and the bad. You're witnessing life. Then you're dealing with those parents' family dynamics and the effects of, and you're dealing with your own stuff. A lot of times, PKs will go overlooked, if not directly by their parents, whether it's purposely or not on purpose, because I never felt neglected. I'm not going to get on here and tell that bold-faced lie. I am very well taken care of. I've never felt neglected. I've never felt neglected. Even if I knew that I couldn't talk to my daddy about certain stuff, I knew I had my mother. If I knew I couldn't talk to my mom about certain stuff, I knew I had my father. If both of them were getting on my nerves, I would call both one of my grandmothers. Like I have elders. I don't need mothering. I don't need fathering. What I am doing is letting you guys know that when you have to share your parents with people. See, before my parents started to be pastors, they were already ministers. My mama was lead mezzo soprano in the choir. She wasn't a nurse, but she helped take care of the nurse. The nurse was her mentor. She helped take care of the first lady. She helped out in the kitchen. I was a junior usher. My father was the first youth minister. He was the armor bearer for the pastor. When guest ministers were rolling through in Chicago in the 1990s, my daddy was taking care of them. The Noel Jones and the Bishop Wagners and the Iona Locks and Bishop Clayton Jones, I believe that's his name, and like all of these preachers. My father was taking care of them. We were at the church before it opened, making sure that not only was it clean, but that the atmospheres was set. This was what I was birthed into. My parents let us go to skate and go to little house parties with at relatives' house or a close friend. It's a lot of things I wasn't trying to do in high school because I went to school with wicked, evil people. I didn't even join the gospel choir in high school. People was asking me, "You gonna join the choir? That's the church girl. That's the church girl." I said no because I don't want to play with God. I want to be in school singing about God, knowing that this is the same school that I'm actively having premarital sex with classmates in. As low as I've gone in my life, there's just a certain level of integrity that the Most High has allowed me to operate in, and it's not because of me. And when I say integrity, it's the ability to say that that's trash, that's low, that's not okay. I am not one of those 36-year-old single Black women that will ever tell a Black girl or a Black young woman to have a whole stage. That is detrimental. I have contributed to the statistics that go against our community. I have contributed to adding to little Black boy and little Black girl that will have some sense of rejection and abandonment and being a single Black mother. I have done that. It's not because nobody else but me, but pathology, not a but, because I'm not going to eradicate what I just said. Pause. Pathology has to be addressed in all things. PKs are not allowed to make mistakes, life choices, life decisions. PKs have to operate under the contract that their parents signed up because it's a bloodline thing. Let me tell you, the book of Exodus in the 20th chapter, and this is going to be one that I always come back to, and I'm honestly under the belief of it. I'm going to get back to that. When he said that I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. That's a soul connection. The Most High knew your soul before he sent it to the mission that it had to take off by either being an egg on the inside of your mother, because sperm dies after a certain amount of days. But does not mean that the DNA to produce that sperm, that the thought and the attention for it to be produced was not already there. So before you ever came through the female and the male reproductive system, your soul was already known by the Most High. That's why I said that his thoughts are not your thoughts and his ways are not your ways. So when your soul enters into a soulish being to have a spiritual experience that becomes tangible through the natural realm by the pushing out process of our labor and by delivery, we enter in our free will into what the spirit has said, because spirit, or the breath of life that enters. See, while we're on the inside of our mother, we are dependent upon her breath to survive. So when we begin to inhale chokma for ourselves, and now know that feminine wisdom has now become on the inside of us through the ruach, through the spirit, through the breath of life. But then when we begin to have these soulish experiences, we forget that PKs are kids. We're children. Our souls had a contract and an understanding with the Most High that our parents surrendered and submitted to because of our bloodline. So Exodus 20, when it talks about visiting the iniquities upon the third and fourth generation of those who hate him and who don't keep his commandments, generational blessings come, but these contracts. So even though I did not sign up for it from my birth, my soul was already in connection with Robert and with Patricia before they were ever formed and before their parents were ever formed, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. This is an ancestral history, but because of my free will, as well as the soulish free wills of others who decided to put their hands on the inside of my petri dish to begin to contaminate, that's the product of what it is that you see. A contract between spirit man and soul being pushed out by free will. So being 17 and pregnant was one of the most grueling experiences I have ever went through in my life. And the stress of it had an effect on my child to the point that 4 times I went into premature labor with her. Getting pregnant at the age of 17, after a ministerial high, I had just became a recording artist again. As a professional background singer on a gospel CD with my own rap solo on there. The live recording was so amazing. We went on tour right away around the Midwest at a handful of churches in a couple different cities. We went back into the studio to re-record and smooth out our vocals. I was preaching a lot, being young and being stupid, not realizing patterns, choices, decisions, being young and being stupid. Got pregnant. Second day of senior year. Didn't really know if I was for sure. Partially denial, mostly ignorance. Anyone who's a woman know that when you're young, you can go 2 months with nothing, then twice the next month. That's how it was for me. When I finally sat with myself, I was a good 3 months. Wasn't showing. I've always had a 6-pack. So I did not start showing until I was about 6.5, 7 months pregnant. So I'm 17 and pregnant. Go to tell my parents. I told my big cousin Marquita first. I'm not going to tell the other person I told because till this day, you know. Called my big cousin Marquita because she had a baby already. My big cousin and my big sister jumped in very protective mode of me right away. Being faced with the option of unaliving my child at the age of 17 disgusted me. I've always been under the belief that, and not to chuckle, I have a dark sense of humor, but this is true. I've always been under the belief that if I ever unalived a child, that I would pass away on the unaliving table. But this goes back into that regret that I'm talking to y'all about. In Christianity and Pentecost, you're really taught and prophesied to, like, if you sin, you're going to die. Like, you're going to die. And I'm not saying that it's not possible. We see examples of it in the Bible all the time. We see kids whose life get cut short. Like, you see things. But there's such a fear that's clearly not enough fear, and it's not a fear rooted in relationship and reverence. Fear can cause rebellion as well. It can cause acting out. Even if it's not from your parents directly, the people around you, people who had and still have me on a pedestal, that is highly disturbing. And I'm not the only PK that feels this way, that has experienced this. My little sister got bullied at church because I got pregnant. I was ready to fight, couldn't, because I was pregnant. She got bullied at church. Really not. No, my father just told me last week or 2 weeks ago. This is my first time knowing. Somebody said something to him like, "Man, what you feel about your daughter getting pregnant?" He was like, "I don't feel no type of way. My daughter got pregnant for doing the same thing that your daughter has been doing. I just happened to get caught." So let's address that. Um, Clearly, my parents were very hurt. My mother went into protection mode. My daddy got very silent for about 2 weeks. We didn't really communicate. I was walking on pins and needles. I knew I disappointed my father greatly. I broke that man's heart. My father's a very hands-on father. Um, so this is why I understood where Ti came from. My daddy never came in the room while we were getting gynecological checks. My father was definitely present when I was in labor with both of my children, as an unmarried woman, as a woman who had her children in her father's house, as a woman who, if anything happened to me, my daddy would have to pay for my funeral right along with my mother. My daddy was at work while I was in delivery both times. But when it's time to come to labor, he like, all right, here I come. My mother was there during the entire process both times. But we don't focus on Angelina right now. So I can understand where T.I. was coming from because I was raised by my father. And so my daddy would ask me and my sisters, specifically me and my big sister, my baby sister about 6.5 years younger than me. He'd just be like, everything's still intact? We'd be like, yeah. That was his way of making sure that, everything's still intact. We'd be like, yeah. So I never forget when my dad asked me, I said, yeah. And I lied. And I'm not a liar. Thanks be to the Most High. Like, I lied and it did something to me. And I said, he already knows. So I lied for about 2 weeks. We was out to breakfast and I told him. He was very disappointed, but he said, I know. So it was a great disappointment, but my parents didn't stop parenting me. They didn't stop loving me, didn't stop taking care of me. At school, it was hell. It was complete and utter hell. Senior year, maybe freshman year, my memory is kind of messed up, but senior year for sure. It's the only year in high school that I didn't fight. And it's not because it wasn't an attempt. I'll never forget senior year in high school, it being denied who got me pregnant. as well as it being denied that I was actually pregnant because I had a six-pack and I didn't start showing until I was 6.5 months pregnant. And by the time I was 6.5 months pregnant, I wasn't in school. I was on bed rest because I got very, very sick. Never had problems with my asthma really until I got pregnant. Everything's being pushed up. I'm being exasperated by stress, things at church, the guilt, the remorse, the rejection, the abandonment, being looked down upon. I felt more rejection outside of my home than I did in my own house. And when none of these people feeding me or financing me. Actually, I had an elder in my family when they found out I was pregnant say, "How could you do this to me?" My mother stepped in and said, "This ain't got nothing to do with you." I'm telling you. This was between me and my parents. Other parties really didn't even matter because they can decide to come and go. Being 17 and pregnant was very depressing. I mentioned going into premature labor with my daughter 4 times. Medicine had to be given so that she could be here. Um, when you're that young and pregnant, you're vulnerable on all levels. You're forced to, due to your decisions, to go into the workforce younger. And my parents still gave me the option to work or go to school. But I would have to contribute in rent. I would have to buy my child's clothes, my clothes. And the way my big sister groomed me when she went to work, she started buying me stuff. So automatically for me, even though I had a baby, I just started buying my little sister stuff. That's just how we operated. But bringing a child into the world exactly a month before my 18th birthday turned out to be one of the most beautiful experiences that I've ever had in my life. Oh, I don't do that. Um, Looking back to the level of hurt and the level of pain that I was experiencing around me, it was an opportunity for me to get closer to my mother. I was always a daddy's girl, and I'm still a daddy's girl. But in that, that's when it was solidified. I always knew my mother would never neglect me, never leave me, never abandon me, never purposely hurt me. But when I became less than the lady that she taught me to be, my mother never once called me out of my name, never once talked under my skirt, never once came against or questioned my parenting, never once harmed me or doubted me as a mother. My mother started to mother me even deeper, actually. And that allowed me to never take my rejection and my abandonment and my issues with people out on my daughter. That allowed me that when she was born at 11:45 at night, after 12 hours and 15 minutes of easy labor, and I looked into her big bluish purple eyes to know that no matter what and who comes and goes, that my purpose had now shifted even the more. To be thankful that even though I got pregnant at the age of 17, my parents never had to call me and say, "Come get your baby." I never tried to dump my daughter off onto my parents. I never not worked to provide for my child unless I had a health issue. And even then, I would go back to work. I never took my parents' assistance or love for granted. I mothered my child from 17 all the way up until now. So, although being pregnant at the age of 17 wasn't okay, and it isn't okay, you shouldn't be having sex. Something beautiful came out of it. And I'm able to say that at the age of 18, my daughter has broken every generational curse that I had built up until her age. I got her out of high school without fighting. I got her out of high school on time. I've been fighting since kindergarten. I graduated summer school because my education was affected. Because being pregnant at 17, I had straight A's being homeschooled. Because for the first year in high school, I was finally able to somewhat focus on my academics because I would cut class to avoid fighting. And when I would show up for class, the teachers would be like, "You are a genius. You don't even study and you get A's." So at the age of 17, being pregnant, my chemistry teacher purposely failed me, and she ended up getting fired because my mother and father came up to the school with loads and loads of complaints. So I ended up having summer school. My daughter graduated on time. My daughter's going straight into a 4-year university. My daughter's not pregnant. My daughter has standards. She's cognitive. She's loving. She's understanding. She's strong in her resolve. She knows who she is. She knows her good. She knows her bad. She knows what she wants to do with her life, with her career. If she does not want to do something, she takes a step back. She builds her boundaries. She speaks life into people. She's an amazing friend. So though born out of time and season because of the actions of myself, it's not a regret. So for those of you whom have contributed to the hurt, the pain, the chastisement, the rejection, the abandonment of PKs, of single mothers, that's fine. For those pastors whose sons are PKs and their sons are making babies and still able to play the bass, still able to play the drums, still able to play the keyboard, still able to lead praise and worship, still able to be an armor bearer, still be able to run for offices and make babies, create fake marriages, have multiple marriages, have some equality for your sons when it comes to sitting them down as well. I don't believe that a woman can do what a man can do. I do believe that a man is held to a standard as well. The sons of Eli himself, the sons of Korah. With that being said, if you're 36, in your 30s, 25 and older, I'm going to say, especially 30 and older, do not encourage these young women to have whole stages. Do not encourage them to get on birth control at 14, 15, 16 years old. That's bad parenting, in my opinion. I know some people like, that's bad parenting that you got pregnant, that you got pregnant. And listen, my mama wasn't trying to put me on birth control. It was a refusal point for me that causes infertility. Teach your daughters you don't need birth control. Your only birth control should be keeping your legs and your mouth and your anus closed. The lack of the ring should mean the lack of a NuvaRing. Birth control causes infertility, causes mood swings, causes depression, obesity. It contributes to infertility and problems, imbalance in the hormones, having problems getting pregnant. And we put our children on birth control from the age of 16. And then, yes, then we do have premarital sex, and premarital sex is a huge problem. We have to teach our daughters that they are precious rubies. That's it. That's all. It's a lot that I have said. I didn't expect this video to be this long. I know some of y'all gonna watch it just because of the topic. Some of y'all probably skimmed through. Also, if I was in high school with you and I was pregnant, and you're one of those females who were pregnant at 14 and 15 years old. See, I found out a lot recently because I don't pry people's business. I don't ask about stuff. My business just happens to be the topic of conversation. No exaggeration. But finding out that, and it's a problem, and we're going to address it, not in a messy way, but in an educational way very soon. That a lot of the women that were bullying or trying to me in high school and talking about me and things like that, they were actually having sex since like the 6th grade. They were pregnant by grown men in high school. They were having abortions. A lot of these older women in the church who had their mouths on me were married to pedophiles and married to men that were cheating on them and were actually sleeping with their spiritual sons. Like, it's a lot of things that I have put up with and I have dealt with being a PK, being a preacher. It's a lot of things that I don't speak out about, and it's a lot of things that I don't say because I move with a certain level of grace, a certain level of tact, a certain level of poise, a certain level of decorum. I am my mother's child. But if you knew my mother, you knew that my mother was actually the one that would say whatever she want to say, however she want to say it. So I'd be tapping into Robert when I don't say much, even though it sounds like I say everything that comes to my mind because I'm my father's child as well. But in this season, we're going to call a thing, and we're going to talk for what it is. Y'all be humble, be blessed. I hope this video gave some further insight because I'm about to make some videos on the statistics of child support and single motherhood and things of that nature. And I am not exempt from these statistics that it is that I'm about to bring out. With that being said, this is Jacolia of Jacolia Gems. Thank you so much for coming back to view my channel. Once again, peace, love, blessings. Y'all be whole, y'all be well, y'all be healed. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, as well as leave a comment. I definitely appreciate it. Talk to y'all soon.